I'm Dave Palumbo, founder of Species Nutrition. From my earliest bodybuilding days, I believed in only putting the best in my body. And that lives on in the Species Nutrition line of products. I put my name and reputation on every bottle of Species Nutrition products. If you want to be your absolute best, join the evolution.
Hey guys, we're super excited to be here at the LA Fit Expo. It's our third year in a row. And what we're going to be doing today is we're going to be launching the Tasty Pastry. It's a low-carb Pop-Tart. It's got 3 to 4 grams of net carbs. And we love this show. This is our best place to be in LA.
If you want to build a massive chest, you have to stop bench pressing right now.
Welcome to Heinz Senior's Coaching Up. Get access to the P3AK High Intensity Training ebook and its exclusive video tutorials. Commit with Heinz's coaching right now and be provided with a year of meal plans, training programs, and more. www.p3akday.com. There is no room for the littles.
Hey, this is the Game Triple H from the WWE. You're watching RXMuscle.com, the truth in bodybuilding.
RX Television on RXMuscle.com. This is Ask Dave, better known as hashtag Ask Dave, your 30-minute question and answer show with Dave Palumbo. All your questions, diet, training, supplementation, IFBB pros, news, whatever's on your mind. It is all on the tables. We now bring in Dave Palumbo. Dave, if you go through bodybuilding Instagram now, and again, it's really hard to believe that we just had the Arnold Classic, which seems to be about 9 weeks ago. It is in about, 5.5 weeks from now. You're starting to see progress pictures again. You're starting to, when you scroll through bodybuilding Instagram, you're starting to see those physique updates, something that, we saw only about 10 weeks ago. We're starting to see it again now. Contest season about to get underway.
Yeah, it's exciting. Bodybuilding is starting up again. I don't know if I'm ready for it yet, but I guess we all eventually will as soon as that first show kicks off. Although we had a show in Saudi Arabia the other day, so bodybuilding has started already early this year. That's probably one of the earliest shows we've ever had in the history of bodybuilding, like in the middle of January. I don't mind that actually. I kind of like to have it year round. I know it's nice to have the break in December, but the Olympia is in December now, so I mean, when the shows start in January, there really is no break. But I guess when you have the Arnold as the first big event of the year, that's, makes it the whole thing seem relevant, because that's when we first get to see Olympia competitors on a bodybuilding stage competing, and we kind of know what to expect or get a little foreshadowing of what to expect for the coming year. So yeah, it's exciting, and I'm glad it's back in, at the usual time frame in Columbus, Ohio. I know they're rededicating themselves to making this the best Arnold Classic ever. Arnold is very involved with it personally. There's been a little bit of a change in who's promoting it and how it's being promoted, but I think it's going to be tremendous. Our good friend David Bay obviously is involved in that whole process, and we've been in intimate contact with him regarding that. So I know this thing's going to go off, probably be one of the biggest Arnolds of all time, especially with Brandon Curry in it.
So Brandon Curry, who returns after winning the title in 2019, of course, a few months after that, he would go on to win the Olympia. Dave, before we get to the questions, you had sent me this, so if you want to tell our audience more about it, forgive me if I'm mispronouncing it. Semaglutide.
Yeah.
If you so you got a message about it. I guess it was to promote on this show.
Yeah, Titan Medical has, I think we mentioned it a few weeks ago, Titan Medical has a GLP peptide product called semaglutide coming out, and it's out now, and it is available, and it's one of these peptides that really helps with, number one, blood sugar control. It helps with appetite a lot. So if you're a person that can't control your appetite, it's really good. And the great thing is you don't need to actually be a patient or do any blood work to get this stuff. You kind of just have to contact TitanMedicalCenter.com. If you mention the show or myself, RX Muscle, you'll get a nice discount. And just after filling out some paperwork, you can get some of this stuff. And I think a lot of bodybuilders might, or just regular people might benefit from it. Once again, if you're running slightly high blood sugars, or if you have really bad appetite control, especially while you're dieting for show, this is something you might want to give it a shot.
Let's go to the questions again. The first two questions are from the Dave Palumbo Experience app. First question is about fiberlize. Starting your low-carb diet, what's the best time to use your fiberlize, and should you gradually increase or go to 2 servings a day right away?
You know, you really should be using the product year-round, you know, to be honest with you, because we always need fiber in our diet. However, if you've never used the product and you're just starting it, okay, you really, you know, especially if you've never used a fiber product at all, I would start with a half a dose once a day. If your body tolerates that well, in other words, you don't get gassy or crampy or anything like that, then go to a half a serving twice a day for a few days. If you tolerate that well, build up to like 1 full serving and 1/2 serving, and then eventually you want to get to 1 full serving twice a day. I usually take it around noon on an empty stomach and before bed. That's just my regimen. It doesn't matter when you take it. Just separate them by, you know, at least 6 hours. And I think, you know, most people tolerate it really well. Sometimes older people who have never used fiber, who have constipation issues, they take it and they get very crampy because their colon is very weak. And fiber does, especially soluble fiber and based, you know, and psyllium-based soluble fiber is even more potent at doing this. It makes your colon work. It's like, you know, and I've made this analogy before. It's like a personal trainer for your colon. It's like, all right, colon, get your ass in gear. It's time to start doing some exercise here. And that's going to build your colon up and make it stronger and help move waste through you. But initially, if it's very weak and you put in a stimulus that's going to make the colon work very hard, sometimes it doesn't respond well and it can get crampy, it can get fatigued, and that can cause gas or even make your constipation issue worse initially. So start slow, build up. Once that musculature of your colon builds up, then you're going to see amazing results. A lot of people who are younger who use it, they can go right to the full 2 doses a day and they're fine and they love it. So once again, there's a reason. You know, people who always say, "Oh, I can't take the fiberlize, it bothers my stomach, I get too gassy, crampy." Those are the people that need it worse than anyone, because those people, it's basically telling their body, my colon's so weak that it can't even handle this workout. It's like saying, you know what, I'm not going to train legs because every time I do squats, I'm crippled for 3 days. No, you don't. You start slowly and you build up so that eventually after 2, 3, 4 weeks, you're squatting and there's no problem at all. That's how it works. The problem with the colon is it's an involuntary muscle, meaning you cannot work it directly. The only thing that makes that colon contract and move stuff is fibrous foods and or supplements. The great thing about taking a fiber supplement, you know, like fiberlize, is that the psyllium in there, okay, is way more potent on a gram for gram basis than, say, even like, I guess oat bran would be like the gold standard in foods as far as soluble fiber goes. If you need 8 grams of oat bran to equal 1 gram of psyllium, so you can do a lot less and get more potent, you know, more results out of it. And that's why psyllium should always be the basis of what you're doing. There's also different swell rate psyllium also that you have to consider as well. You know, fiberlize might, you know, give you a better reaction and a better result, and I think that's why a lot of people notice it, because we use a very high swell rate psyllium, meaning it absorbs more water, it has more of a bulking effect on the stool. A lot of companies, you know, they want to save money, so they use a lower swell rate, and it doesn't really do as much. It's like you ever see these like benefibers out there? You can actually literally mix them in water and they disappear. There's like no grit, there's nothing. People are like, oh, this is so much easier to consume. Yeah, of course it is, because it's not doing anything. It's not enough potency. There's different types of fiber that do different things. A lot of, you know, you probably see guar gum, inulin, that's fiber that they put in a lot of foods for taste and substance and thickening, but they don't do the same things as, you know, to the colon that a psyllium-based fiber or an oat bran-based fiber would do. So, you know, just thinking because your product has fiber in it doesn't mean it actually is going to do anything. Fiber 1 bars, you know, been around for years. If you look at the ingredients, they don't even have any fiber in them. They have like a guar gum or something like that, just to hold. It's a candy bar, and they just put some stuff in it to hold it together. They call it a fiber bar. You're eating a candy bar basically. So you have to kind of do your research, and this is why I'm constantly educating people, because once people use the product, you don't stop using it, because you realize, you know, how vital it is to your health. And once you see your LDL cholesterol go down, and once you see, you know, your blood sugar control be better, because fiber can, you know, lower the output of glucose from the liver, you realize that it's really just as important as eating enough protein, it's just as important as going to the gym, and it's just as important as getting enough sleep.
Second question, again from the Dave Palumbo Experience app. When training 5 days a week, as you suggest, I mean, his question is, how do you prefer to take off days? So I'm not sure if he's, talking specifically about when to take them or how you would go about spending those off days when you're not training.
Yeah. Well, how you spend them is you do nothing. you don't work out. You don't go do push-ups in your house and pull-ups and sit-ups and stuff like that. You take off days and off day. I'm a machine. I like to have a very, very regimented schedule and do the same thing all the time, because I find you get the best results when you do that. So I would do 3 days in a row training. I would take 1 day off. I would do 2 days in a row, take 1 day off, and then repeat. So it would take me, there's 5 training days a week. Of those 5 training days, I'm training one or two small, one and whatever. It's usually one major body part, maybe a small body part like calves or something like that in there as well. And so every body part gets worked once a week, and it repeats every week. And pretty much I did that most of my career. At some points, and I've talked about this in the past, I changed my 7-day rotation to an 8-day rotation. I still took 2 days off, but 2 of those days, rather than do arms on one day, I would do biceps and forearms on one day, and I'd do triceps on another day, because I was kind of trying to prioritize building my arms, which seemed to work for me. And I liked the 8-day rotation. It worked really well, especially when I was training very heavy. It gave me extra days to recover. But for most people, 7-day split is adequate. And I think that, once again, on your off days, don't go running around all over the place. Don't try to do extra stuff at your house. Don't go into the gym and do, quote, feeder workouts where you're doing a couple light sets here and there to pump up the muscles. Rest, rest, rest. And just to make a point, these 2 questions came from the Dave Palumbo Experience app. This is an app that I have out there. You can download it on your iPhone or your Android phone. It's $29 a month, and you basically get me as your personal coach in your pocket, on your phone. Everything I've ever done as far as writings, all my videos are all in one place for you to find. We put up a workout every single week there, and I answer questions in an open forum. So if you ask questions, they get the question and the answer goes into the open forum. I pick the best questions, and I do a Q&A video like we're doing right now. It's specific to the app, so it's extra. It's like extra credit, extra stuff you get to watch. And then we pick 2 questions usually that we answer here on the Ask Dave on YouTube. So it's a learning experience that's constantly evolving, because the questions constantly evolve. We're always putting new stuff up there. It's really a great resource. It's a great gift to buy someone if you want, or like I said, if you're just constantly looking to learn and you don't want to necessarily hire people for coaching because it's too expensive, $29 a month, you can't go wrong with that.
Let's go to our Instagram question. Again, if you're not already following us, the handle is official_RX Muscle. If you're watching us for the first time on YouTube, hit the subscribe button, hit the notification bell. You're not going to miss any of our shows, segments, or updates. If you like what you're watching, hit the like button, comment below, and as always, we thank you for all your support all year round. Good one here from our friend Neil Zalewski. Is there any drug you believe is so dangerous that it warrants being banned by the IFBB and I guess the governing body of bodybuilding?
Well, I think there are drugs that shouldn't be used in bodybuilding. I think DNP is one of those drugs. And I think it's important for me to preface, and people know me. I mean, I've been around for a very long time. I've probably been doing this longer than anyone at this point in time. I dare I even, want to admit it. I'm hardly conservative. I believe that there's a certain way of doing things, and I'm not a prude where I'm going to say, oh, this should be natural. I'm not going to feed you that line of bullshit. But DNP is very dangerous because the effective dose and the lethal dose are very close to each other. And for different people, they metabolize the drug differently, and it depends what you combine it with. So to me, it's something that it's a place you shouldn't go. Okay? Does it work for some people? Yeah, but every person who has ever used it and gotten results from it all said, oh, a couple days there I felt terrible, or I had to put myself in a cold bathtub because I was heating up too much, or I felt terrible, I had no strength or memory. That's not a drug that's worth taking. Having said that, diuretics can be very dangerous if you take too many of them. I don't think that banning anything is the way to do it. I think it's about education. If someone tells you to take diuretics for 10 days prior to a show, that's not a person I would listen to because it's unnecessary. You can lose all the water you need to lose within 18 to 24 hours. If anyone's telling you to do more than that, probably not, might not be a great person to listen to. I mean, everyone has their own protocols, but a lot of people just use protocols because that's all they know. and they don't, say to themselves, this might be dangerous. Maybe we shouldn't do this. Because if people can get dry on one day of diuretics, why would you do 5 days of diuretics? It doesn't make any sense. So diuretics can be very dangerous. I don't think they should be banned. I just think that people have to understand the science of it. They have to educate themselves about it and then make a really good, informed decision before listening to someone who tells them to do something that seems reckless. I think that's the best way to put it.
Let's go to Caleb Ruby. Question about aspartame.
Aspartame, yeah.
Aspartame, yeah. Does it affect gut health? I've heard somewhere that it can lower the amount of good bacteria in your gut. And I've been drinking diet sodas for years. I know you've talked about diet soda on prep. Specifically, it's one of the questions you get a lot. So if you want to address that as far as it affecting your gut bacteria.
Yeah. I don't think that aspartame, which is NutraSweet or Equal, it's the same thing. That was the sweetener. Nowadays, sucralose seems to be the in sweetener, but they're still using diet sodas. They use aspartame in there. It's basically two amino acids together: aspartic acid and phenylalanine. You mix them together, and it creates a sweet taste. Simplistically speaking, the problem is that in some people that have weak gut health to begin with, I think it can be an irritant. I don't necessarily know if it kills the good bacteria off. I don't really buy that. But I think if you take it in excessive amounts and you have weak gut bacteria and or gut health, because you might be genetically predisposed to it, or maybe you're stressed out, or maybe you just don't take enough probiotics, and you don't take a fiber supplement, which is going to feed those gut bacteria, it could cause irritation there. I know people with some colitis issues that if they take too much of it, they start getting inflammation in there, and it causes problems. But for the majority of people, it doesn't have any negative effects. If it did, there would be lawsuits and there would be more about it. What you hear is anecdotal evidence of people that have weird, they're reporting weird things. I remember one time I took I used to sell NutraSweet in this in a bottle, almost like you could scoop it out like sugar. And when I was dieting, I was starving to death, and I would sometimes go into that thing and eat spoonfuls of it, and I would get a headache from it because it can change. Amino acids are the building blocks of the neurotransmitters in our brain. So I'm sure if you put too many of one or two type amino acids into your bloodstream and it goes to the brain, you can certainly create some weirdness going on there. I never had any gut issues with it, but I felt that sometimes if I took too much diet soda, and it would be literally, I don't know if I was peeing my brains out just because I was drinking so much liquid, or if it was the aspartame in there acting as a diuretic on my body. But I never had any gut issues from it, and I used a lot of it. So what I think is, and I've seen it once again, I have people that I know that have colitis or ulcerative colitis or maybe Crohn's disease. Those people have a problem if they take in too much artificial sweetener. So you have to kind of identify, what your GI tract health is to begin with. If you are sensitive, then maybe you shouldn't use too much of these things. If you notice that it's irritating you, then cut back on it. That's all. It's all about balance. I think people do too much of something, especially while they're dieting, because they're starving to death. And then they have a repercussion. They think, well, I can't take artificial sweeteners because this is what it does. No, well, you were taking in 1,000 times probably what you should have been taking in. Maybe try to cut back on some, give your gut a break, take a good probiotic from a company like Natron. Natron makes a really good, I've talked about this before, they make powdered probiotics. They're in little jars, they're refrigerated, you buy them from natron.com. There's one called Megadophilus, there's one called bifidobacter. One of those is the bacteria that you find in your small intestine. One of them is the bacteria you find in your colon predominantly. And I will alternate day to day on those things. So I'll take a half a teaspoon of one day, I'll put it in my fiberlize at night before bed, I'll do the other one the next day. And I won't do that continuously. I'll do it if I feel like maybe my gut health is not as good, I'm not digesting my food as well, maybe my blood sugars are not ideal in the morning. And I feel like that fixes it, because these gut bacteria, it's basically like you're seeding a lawn with fertilizer, so to speak. You're putting the good bacteria back into your colon. You're actually by taking it with a fiber supplement, you're actually putting a food source in there for these bacteria to ferment, and it kind of just reseeds the lawn, so to speak, in your colon and your small intestine. And once again, I don't do it all the time, but it's nice to have in the fridge. if you feel like you're getting a little problem, maybe you did take too many artificial sweeteners in, take some probiotics, neutralize that effect.
Interesting one here from Carlos Fit NYC, and I know you touched upon this topic on this past Heavy Muscle Radio, and that is about Big Ramy, because there is the narrative now, and we've heard other media outlets in bodybuilding, other personalities in bodybuilding talk about Big Ramy as the representative of the sport, as Mr. Olympia, and whether he's doing a good job or not. Well, Carlos Fit flat out comes out and says that he's not representing the sport well. No YouTube workouts, seminars, not really much on Instagram. So I'm going to ask you to give your flat opinion on this. But then also, if you were advising Ramy now as a two-time Mr. Olympia, what would you be telling him as far as how he should be carrying himself, given the age that we live in, as far as social media and as far as the way he could be putting himself out there?
Right. I think Ramy's problem is that Ramy takes everything very personally. And look, I haven't talked to him about this. I'm just speculating here. I think Ramy is affected by what people say about him. And I think that he feels like if he remains kind of anonymous for most of the year, that he doesn't have to deal with social media and allow it to affect his mind and his mindset of what's going on. So Dorian did that back in the day. There was no social media when Dorian was competing, but you would never see him. Maybe at a guest posing here and there, but he would lock himself into his gym and temple, and all he did was focus on the Olympia. Now, I don't know if that's what Ramy's doing. I think Ramy is just avoiding social media, except for the fact that he has to promote whatever brands that he's being sponsored by. Is it good for the sport? No, of course it's not. As Mr. Olympia, we want to see him out there. We want to see him talking. We want to see him, giving us his insights into what he's doing training-wise and eating-wise and keeping us. We want to follow his life, right? That's why we like watching the Kardashians, It's because it makes us kind of live vicariously through them. I mean, we all, as bodybuilders, want to be Mr. Olympia in the back of our mind someplace. And if we can't be Mr. Olympia, we at least want to see what Mr. Olympia is doing with himself, right? So, is it good for the sport? No. Is it good for Ramy? Probably, because I think that it's probably keeping Ramy focused and preventing him from looking at the negative aspects of what's going on and dealing with, trolls online and people who everyone has an opinion on him. So from a perspective of historically speaking, Ramy's doing the right thing for Ramy. It's just not helping our sport. Now, the only thing I can say in defense of him at this point is really there's no appearances to be made. It used to be back in the day or before COVID, people would, Mr. Olympians would go to different shows and guest pose and do seminars. People are not traveling as much. It's a pain in the neck with, vaccination cards and getting tested every time he leaves the country. He's got to be tested on the way in, on the way out. So I understand why he wouldn't be doing that. I know that he's going to be guest posing at the Pittsburgh Pro Jim Mannion show come May. So, I mean, people will get a chance to see him there. But look, Ramy's got to do what's good for Ramy at the end of the day, because he knows what works for him and what doesn't. I don't think he's purposely avoiding, going on social media, doing these things because he hates the fans. I think he just knows that it's not good for his head.
Let's go to Akshay Pandey. We talk about balance, symmetry. And I know everybody's different, but in terms of your general guidelines, so he says that his left side is completely dominating his right side. I mean, to say that my left side shoulders, biceps, triceps, chest, quads, more developed than the right side. I try my best to work equally on both the parts. I'm not even lefty. I mean, he asked specifically what he can do to improve it. In your cases where one of your clients is severely overdeveloped on one side,
right,
I guess what will be your general guidelines to bring about some level of symmetry?
I was an insane nutcase when I was competing because I would look in the mirror and I would measure things and I'd be like, oh, this arm's bigger, this leg's bigger, and my left leg is bigger than my right leg. I think my left arm is bigger than my right arm too. So what I would do is whenever I would train, if I'm doing something bilateral, meaning that I'm using a bar on something like that, I would always push from the weak side. I wouldn't even focus on the side that was bigger and stronger, just because I knew that side was going to work no matter what. If I was squatting, I'd lean into the right leg, and I would push from that leg and not worry about the left one because I knew the left one was going to work. Likewise, I'd also sometimes throw an extra couple of sets for like leg press, one-legged leg press with the weaker leg. At the end, for arms, what I would always do is train everything unilaterally. So I stopped doing barbell curls. I stopped doing anything that required two arms at the same time, skull crushes. I did everything unilaterally, one arm at a time, so each arm is only going to work, is going to lift the same weight. And I noticed after a while, things started getting much more in line with each other, symmetrically speaking. And you have to just be, and I was constantly aware of this because I just knew there was a discrepancy. And that's not any fault of anyone else. We all have a side that's dominant. It doesn't have to be, I'm a righty, but my left side is bigger. I don't know why. That's just the way my body works. It could be the way your skeletal structure is. It could be the way the feet are aligned. That's why I always tell people to go out and get a good pair of orthotics, which are custom, inserts that go in your shoes to make sure your skeleton and your whole structure is aligned properly. And that's all you can really do, and it takes time, but they will catch up with each other. Most people are out of alignment or out of balance in terms of symmetry goes because when they do their bench pressing, they do their shoulder pressing, they do their squats, they're using the stronger side just because they're not aware of it, because that's the side that's bigger and just dominant, and that's what's going to work. And then you're going to build that side bigger because you're using it more than you're using the other side. So you have to consciously make an effort to work the weaker side. Likewise, when I would do exercises that were unilateral, I always started with the weak side, and if I did 9 reps with this arm, okay, when I got to this one, even if I could do 10 or 11, I stopped at 9 reps with the same weight so that I would not overdevelop one beyond the other.
Speaking of you training, obviously you're back training at a public gym.
Yeah.
You've well documented that on your Instagram. Signoretti wants to know what are some of the positives and negatives of training at a public gym after training at your home gym so long. And obviously this has been a discussion that's taken place over the course of the last couple of years. There's so many gym closures, people being forced to find at-home methods of training, some resorting to building of their own training facilities at home, some literally using Home Depot cement blocks or whatever it takes. But now that you're back, after quite the absence, positives and negatives training in a public gym.
Well, I have more weight there, so I didn't have really enough weight in my house. I think that was really it. And I didn't want to build out a huge gym in my house because because my kids, I don't want them getting into the dumbbells and all that. Plus, I didn't want it laying around. I didn't really have a separate room to do it in. I have it in kind of like my entertainment room upstairs. So I had the basics just to kind of do something, so to speak. Obviously at the gym there's equipment. I really wasn't able to train my legs at my house because I didn't really have a squat set up. I didn't really have any leg extension or leg curl machines. So legs are definitely getting a way better workout there, for sure. Calves, I couldn't really do calves in my house. I've been doing them on the stairs. Upper body, I didn't do a terrible job. I really didn't have any a lot of chest stuff because my dumbbells weren't heavy enough. So I'm doing more intense workouts. I'm being able to use more angles as far as benches go. If I need a spot, I have a spot there, although I don't really lift that heavy that I really need a spot, but I always have someone there. And it's just, it's a good environment mentally just to get out of the house, get to an big open gym with good lighting and a lot of people training, and, it's motivating. So I've seen a change in my physique for sure over the last 6 months.
Take a couple of more questions. Nick Dello, your take on detox baths for muscle recovery and cleaning out toxins such as Epsom salts, apple cider vinegar, baking soda. So, in general, your thought on, detox baths and maybe in your experience, what you've done as far as for recovery.
Yeah, I've never really done any of those, but I know people that have done Epsom salt baths. I knew my friend Rod in Australia, probably watching the show. His wife, it was Andrea Izard. She used to compete, and he was a big believer in using the Epsom salt prior to a show instead of a diuretic to pull water out. And that's something that works, but you have to be careful when you do these Epsom salt baths. You can really pull too many electrolytes out of yourself. So I don't really recommend you do them because it can mess up your electrolyte balance in your body, potassium and sodium. I just don't think there's any real merit to it. If you want to lay in a bath just to kind of relax your muscles, that's great and everything like that. To me, cold is better than heat, I think, because cold reduces inflammation and helps your body recover a little better. But I know people do the bath, the hot bath and they go into the cold, shower. There's all kinds of crazy, modalities out there. But I don't necessarily buy into the whole baking soda, Epsom salt baths. Once again, I don't believe in messing with electrolyte balance in the body. That's a problem. That's why I never tell people to restrict sodium. When you start playing around with electrolytes, the muscles just don't work well. And that's just the way it goes. Sodium and potassium are necessary for muscle contraction. Likewise, calcium too. So you don't want to restrict it. You don't want to do anything that pulls it out of your body. You want to keep your electrolytes at the optimal levels. Likewise, you don't want to overload your body with electrolytes. You put too much potassium into your body, that's not a good thing either. So my advice, go get a deep tissue massage. Way better. Way more enjoyable too.
Booby Bobby Trap Lord, our favorite name. If the goal is pure maintenance and to get health, optimal health, again, for everybody, I imagine it's different. You don't want to go into a deep homework assignment, but general guidelines, dose of test, and amount of protein per day, just in terms of optimal health.
For everyone, it's different. I mean, usually 100 milligrams of like a long-acting testosterone ester per week should be enough to keep you at a nice normal level. People use 200, but that kind of boosts you a little. Usually for most people, it'll boost you higher than probably you need to be. I don't necessarily know if that will negatively affect your health or not, but it'll certainly create more of an anabolic effect in the body. But I think 100 is a really good replacement dosage. As far as protein intake, everyone has different requirements, I could eat 100 grams of protein a day and maintain my muscle, pretty well. That's pretty low for most people. Some days I'm higher, some days I'm around there. I kind of just vary it, like how I feel, because I'm not really trying to get bigger. If I went up to 200 grams of protein a day on a regular basis, and I'm 190, 195 pounds right now. If I ate 200 grams a day, I would grow. I'd probably put on 10, 15 pounds of muscle on no drugs, just because my body, has had the muscle before. I'm training and creating the stimulus for it. I just don't really want to be over 200. I don't mind. I can teeter around the 200 mark, and I've been like going up a little bit because of my training, obviously at the gym, but I don't really want to go much over that because my blood pressure is really good, heart rate's good, I feel good. There's no reason, and I know what happens if I start gaining muscle. Then you get that bit by that muscle bug, and then you want to get bigger and bigger and bigger, and I don't want to go there because right now all my blood work is normal. I feel good, and so I don't want to cause any problems. So as far as for health purposes goes, it really depends on what your goals are. If you don't want to really gain or lose anything, you could probably maintain on 150 grams of protein per day. The key is getting enough essential fatty acids in, because that's going to help the health markers tremendously. I think a lot of people don't really focus enough on fats. Taking a supplement like Omega-Lize, taking a couple tablespoons of macadamia nut oil a day, and we make one for Species Nutrition. It's really good. I think that's important, because that's going to give you, number one, your essential fatty acids. It's going to give you your monounsaturated fatty acids. And you know what? It's a good idea to get some cholesterol-based fats as well. Have some whole eggs. Have a piece of red meat here and there. Balance. It's about balance. If you're not doing, I wouldn't eat a fatty piece of crappy meat, but if you're eating, red meat a couple times a week, that's great. If it's lean, you can eat it once a day if you really want to. So it's hard to make absolute recommendations unless I see people's blood work, because some people, they can eat anything and it doesn't affect their cholesterol levels. Other people, if they don't get the right amount of fats, they don't get the right amount of fiber in their diet, then their LDLs go through the roofs because they have a genetic predisposition for that. So to answer the question simplistically, about 100 milligrams of testosterone a week, 150 probably grams of protein is probably, reasonable per day.
Finally, this one from David Michael, and I'm sure you get messages about this all the time. He says he has not heard really anything about your cancer recovery, your fight against cancer. What is the latest that you could tell us?
I went for blood work. When you have a thyroid cancer, the way they do is they take blood work on every 3 months or so, and they want to look at your TSH levels, thyroid stimulating hormone levels. You look at your T4, T3 levels, T3 being active thyroid, and you look at something called thyroglobulin. Thyroglobulin is a protein that your thyroid gland would produce. Now, if you have no thyroid gland like I do, okay, and I'm taking replacement, you would expect to see the T4 levels and T3 levels be normal, right? Because that you would assume that you want to make sure you're taking enough thyroid hormone, and TSH should be low, Because if you're taking enough thyroid hormone and your body's converting T4 to T3, the T3 suppresses your TSH, and it's like you're creating your own, replacement there. Thyroid globulin, however, should be essentially almost zero, because there should be no cells producing thyroid globulin, because they took out my thyroid, they gave me radioactive iodine to kill any remaining cells, because thyroid cancer cells will produce thyroid globulin too. My levels are almost zero, they're like 0.1, so I'm not at zero yet, which could mean they could stay like that forever, because sometimes there's some cells trapped in your lymph nodes or something like that that are just dormant in there, producing some thyroid globulin. It's a very small amount, obviously, so I'm hoping it eventually does go to zero. I'm at 200 micrograms per day of T4 now, which seems to be the ideal dosage to keep me at a good level of T4, T3, and to keep my thyroid or TSH levels suppressed. I go back 1 year after my surgery, this is in March, and what they do is they give you another very small dose of radioactive iodine, not something that you wouldn't even have to, isolate yourself from anyone with, and then they scan your body. So the radioactive iodine theoretically would incorporate into any tissues that might still be in my body. Now, obviously, if they took my thyroid gland out, there would be nothing here. They already ultrasounded my neck and there was nothing there. But if there's some like random spots in my body that might have some tissues, that would light up, so to speak. So that's the next thing I go through. I think once you get past that year and that 1 year scan and that's clear, you're pretty much, essentially, quote, cured. So that's the status on that. I'll find out, in March, after like a year after the surgery, where I'm at. But I feel good. Like I said, I've never felt bad during the whole process. It's interesting to see. I'm into hormones, and my friend obviously is my doctor, an endocrinologist. I know him from growing up with him. And, I can ask him, text him questions and stuff like that. And it's interesting, And the funny thing is when they give you the radioactive iodine, they give you a dose of a thyroid stimulating hormone, a synthetic thyroid stimulating hormone, because that pushes the iodine or the radioactive iodine into any tissues that might be present. Hopefully there won't be any present. And the great way it is, they put you under a scanner and they can see the radioactive iodine light up if it is any place that it shouldn't be. So that's where I'm at.
So there you have it. I'm sure many are thankful for that update, and certainly, keep us posted with all the next steps. I know it's been, quite a gap in between updates. So good to know, good to hear, and good to hear.
What I found out? Whenever people have too many updates when they get sick, that's usually not a good thing. That means usually something went wrong. Enough. So I hope I have zero updates for you guys. I hope there's very few updates regarding this whole process.
Hopefully you get through smoothly, and soon enough we're talking about something totally different. But that is going to do for this episode of Ask Dave. Reminder, right now on the channel, all new episode. Last night it was a heated and contentious episode of the After Hours podcast. Big Rob allegedly sending some nasty messages to Lee Priest. Lee Priest and Jimmy the Bull really getting it onto Rob last night. And we put up a poll on our Instagram as far as whether you think Rob really sent those messages or not. We got some contributions from Cassidy Campbell and Johnny Bravo. So you might see them on next week's episode of the After Hours podcast. That as well as Heavy Muscle Radio, the live episode of Heavy Muscle Radio, which we do now Sunday nights, generally around 11 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Again, it's a great forum. It has Dave, Lee Priest, Chris Aceto, we John Romano, we had Carlo Filippone as well. The chicken guy last night, as so many of you affectionately know him as. Great conversation as always. And the best part of it is that it's a live show, so we get your live user intake, your feedback, your questions. So it's a great all-around time. It's 11 p.m. If you're on the East Coast of the United States, you probably have nothing else to do. West Coast is about 8:30 p.m. But the city where we have the most popularity of that live format, is it Sydney, Australia? Sydney, Australia.
So, yeah.
Big ups to Sydney, Australia. Thank you for all the support, and thank you around the world for all.
I think the Aussies get my sense of humor better than anyone. That's why they watch the show the most.
There you have whatever it takes. For Tyler Shore and Dave Palumbo, I'm Sadiq Faruqi. We'll see you next week.